snow blankets the landscape in north-central Washington. What you can't see is the scorched earth left from last summer's Carlton Complex wildfire. Susan Pritchard is a fire ecologist for the University of Washington. Even through the snow, she can see the damage. She can also see signs of recovery.
Aspen and cottonwood and willow species are all very fire adapted and disturbance adapted in that they're sprouters. And we've already seen just amazing sprouting by the aspen in particular.
The fire this summer damaged other areas far more severely. The Carlton Complex fire burned more than 250,000 acres, most of it in less than 2 days. 30-mile-per-hour winds pushed hot smoke and embers through Okanogan County. Fire swept across shrublands and blazed through forests. Pritchard says it could take half a century or more for this area to recover. But she says there are ways to slow future wildfires.
We can actually change the nature of a lot of the fire that comes. We know fire is going to reoccur. These are fire-dependent ecosystems. So it's not a question about if fire is going to return, but how it's going to return and how much it's going to burn and how much it's going to allow to survive.
Pritchard says the best way to help forests in the long run is through thinning and controlled burns. The question is, how much land needs to be treated to make a difference?
Okay, here we go.
Outside of Yakima, where the snow hasn't fallen yet, the Nature Conservancy is thinning forests. Crews create gaps in the dense forest by cutting down smaller trees. These brush piles have been drying out for more than a year. Now it's time to set them on fire.
Yeah.
That's Matt Dahlgren's job. He's worked to thin these forests for most of his career.
It's not a real sophisticated thing. You just, go to the bottom side of the pile and try to find a dry area and light it.
This reduces the amount of fuel fires have to burn. Fewer small trees could help prevent explosive wildfires.
We're trying to concentrate the growth on a few trees, so these few trees will get large and become more fire resistant and better wildlife habitat over time. We're down at the bottom, so we'll light a few on the bottom and work sort of up and side hill a little bit.
Reese Lully works with the Nature Conservancy in eastern Washington. He says we've done such a good job suppressing fires that we've actually created the conditions that lead to even worse fires.
The current condition of our forests with trees that are smaller and at a higher density creates situations where now the forest is less resilient.
Lully says to strengthen forests, some fires need to be allowed to burn. That's because smaller fires reduce fire fuel, ultimately create habitat, and help regenerate trees.
These forests were born in fire, and as we move into a changing climate, we're going to see more and more fire.
Dave Peterson is a research biologist with the U.S. Forest Service. He studies the relationship between wildfires and climate change.
Fire is not necessarily an enemy, but it is a force of nature that we can live with if we plan for it.
As the climate changes, that force of nature is expected to burn even more of the West's landscape. Since the 1970s, large wildfires are burning across the U.S. 7 times more often. And in the coming decades, researchers expect frequent megafires will become the norm.
We're going to have fires. We just cannot stop fires, but we can reduce their intensity. And the best way to do that is to reduce the fuels that are already out there on the ground. Hey, Morris.
Hey, Dave, how you doing?
You got some time to look at that Carlton Complex map?
Sure.
Morris Johnson analyzes landscapes after wildfires strike.
So the fire basically made the progression here, and then it came into these treatment areas. And I know
He tries to measure the effectiveness of forest thinning and prescribed burns.
Do you think that's kind of the minimum size that treatments need to be?
I think it's a lot better than these treatments here.
Yeah.
This photo shows how thinned forest helped stop a fire before it reached homes.
Went from an active crown fire down to passive crown fire, and then basically it really allowed the firefighters to basically protect these homes by doing spot protection.
Because the Carlton complex was so extreme, almost half the previously thinned areas burned completely. But in some critical areas, researchers found it did make a difference. Back near Yakima, Reese Lawley is hoping the work they're doing will keep wildfires from completely devastating this area someday.
We need to think differently on how we're managing these forests and how we can live with fire in a way that it can benefit forests, benefit people, water, and wildlife.
For now, that means more thinning and controlled burns, and more work to be done.